So in this section, we learned about virtual machines. We started a Windows virtual machine. We started a Linux virtual machine. We learned how to remote into it and SSH into the Linux virtual machine. I want to remind you, I started off this section talking about playing around with it. Definitely go into Microsoft Azure portal, create your own virtual machines. Don't just watch the videos, because that's a great way to reinforce your learning. But trap, or something to look out for, is that when you create a free account, you get a certain amount of credits per month sometimes, and keep an eye on that. Now this is a pay-as-you-go account, and so I've accumulated $17 or $18 here of costs. According to these active resources, I'm up to $30 a month. It's forecasting $40 for this month. Okay, so this is real cost coming out of my credit card. So I got to have, I created a couple of virtual machines. We saw that there's a couple of cents per hour. So, it being live for a couple of hours really isn't more than a couple cents. But when I'm done with it, I really want to shut it down. Okay, so you can go into this subscription blade on the side here. If I open this up, you can see subscriptions. You can see overview. You can see the individual costs. You can filter this by certain types, and it'll tell you what's been costing you money. Now, if we go back to the virtual machines here, let's say I know that I created this Linux machine, but I'm not really going to use it from this point forward. So I can start it up or go into it here. It's running. We can see the CPU usage. We can see that the status says running, and I can say stop. So I want to deallocate this machine. Now remember, with virtual machines, you have the compute resource, the CPU, and the memory that is actually being used, and you're paying by the hour for that. But you also have the storage. So a virtual hard disk has a VHD file, and that's stored in a storage account. So if I go over to the side here and I look at EZ532 exam, sorry, don't know why that wasn't in my recent, but I can see here that there's a couple of storage account, and there's a disk storage account. So within this storage account, the VHD files are stored as blobs. I can see here there's blobs associated with it. The Windows machine is taking up 136 gigabytes of blob storage, and the Linux machine is taking up 31 gigabytes of blob storage. And so storage has pricing associated with it, right? So I can go to the pricing page, see the blob storage, pick my region, and I can see that I'm paying starting at 2.4 cents per gigabyte. Now, this happens to be, let's see if it tells me here. Going to back. This happens to be locally redundant storage, and so I'm on the cheapest tier. So this means the storage, we can talk about that in the storage section. It's not global redundant. There's a lot more pricing for that. But it's locally redundant storage, but I'm paying 2.4 cents per gigabyte. Now the reporting hasn't caught up yet. There's always these little delays and lags within Azure, because Azure is such a big environment. The information doesn't travel as quickly as it might. But I can roughly see 160, 170 gigabytes. And so 170 times 2 is 340. I'm roughly going to pay $3.40 per month. Now, that's not breaking the bank for many people, but having these VHDs around is going to add up. If I do 10 of these, it's going to be $30 a month. All right, so definitely worth keeping an eye on what you're doing. If we go back to the homepage here, you can see that I stopped the Linux virtual machine, and so my costs have actually stopped. It's only the VHD that remains. There's not any memory or that's being allocated or cores being allocated, but the VHD is going to cost me. So I do recommend you keep an eye on your costs. And that is what we covered in this section. Coming up next, let's look at some questions and see what's going to be likely on the exam talking about creating virtual machines.